Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. So I think I mentioned in a previous video that I had ordered a new zero clearance insert. Well, the new PM2000B and the PM2000 are very different inserts. So the one I ordered was the wrong one, and they want $85 for an insert for the 2000B. So I'm going to go about making my own. Thought I'd take you along for the journey. We're going to try a couple of new things, for me at least, and kind of get a sense of what works best. When I pulled the insert out of this saw and got a measurement on it, those are just about the same. I mean, within a thousandth, 2,000ths maybe, of 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood. So I'm going to do a whole bunch in the Baltic birch plywood and create some epoxy holes so that I can thread the little inserts so that I can level it out in the saw. And I'm also going to do one in hardwood and just thread it and see how that works. So it just gives me the opportunity to kind of see which way works best for me. But initially, I'm going to go ahead and create a pattern and get something that fits in there that I can then set up at the router table and flush trim and make several of these. I'll also go ahead and mill this piece of hardwood down to be in that same thickness range as well. So let me create a blank here, and then I'll show you how I make several of them. Okay, so I've created a whole bunch of blanks. What have I got? About 6 of them here, and one of which, of course, is in the hardwood, which was cherry in this case. That's what I had on hand. And I created a template. So the goal here is to use the flush trim router and make multiples of these instead of fitting each one individually. So I'll be able to keep this pattern on hand all the time. Now this pattern I have super glued down to my blank, and I've done that with just blue tape and super glue. So next up, I'll get this stuff out of the way. We'll route this and see how it fits. Okay, let's see how we did. Now this blade doesn't go down far enough to seat this flat, so when we actually cut the kerf, I'll have to change this out to a smaller blade, but that's okay. That's a good fit. Nice and snug. My template is good, so I'm going to go ahead and make all the rest of these, and then we'll go after the leveling screws as well as cutting the kerfs. Okay, so I got all those flush trim routed and I have my template. I used the original insert from the saw to locate the 4 holes for the set screws, and they sit on those little pads that are actually down in the saw. So I'm going to use those to locate all of my new inserts. I have these threaded inserts to go in, and I just picked some 1/4-20 threaded inserts. But I have some concerns on a couple of fronts with the plywood ones. One, I don't think you're going to thread into plywood all that well. And 2, there's one of these that is pretty close to the edge. So I've set up over at the drill press a little Forstner bit, and I'm going to actually widen these holes out in the plywood and then tape off the bottom and fill these with epoxy, and then come back and drill for the 1/4-20 insert. And I'm going to do that on all the plywood ones. And then while those cure, the hardwood one, I'm just going to locate and drill. And I bought one of those 1/4-20 drill bits and the thread taps all in one shot, and we're going to give that a go and see how it works. So for now, I'm going to go over to the drill press and go ahead and enlarge all these holes in preparation for epoxy. Okay, so I've blue taped off all the bottoms, and all I'm going to do now is fill these with epoxy and let them cure. And while they're curing, we'll go ahead and work on the hardwood one and see how that does with just the threaded inserts. Okay, so I'm going to try this drill and tap bit and see how it does. Well, it's got nice threads. Excellent, that should work out fairly well. Okay, so I got a couple extra holes in this one. There's definitely a front and a back to the zero clearance insert, as the tabs for the set screws are a little bit offset. So no big deal, I have a couple extra holes. I also had to locate for the riving knife. Since this will be for my regular blade, that riving knife needs to be in there. And I just simply pulled that right off of the original insert, and it was real simple. So currently I have a dado stack blade in there because it's smaller in diameter, and will allow this to sit in there flat, and then I can raise it up and create a groove, and then this one will fit in. So that's what we're going to do next, is just get this all set in. I've set the set screws, that's all nice and flush and feels good. I'm going to bring the fence over to act as a stop on the one side, keeping it out of the way of the blade. And I'm just going to use my push stick on the other side just to apply a little pressure as I slowly raise the blade. Now in this particular one, because of the riving knife location, it makes it pretty easy to spot. I'm also not going to run any dust collection on this, so you can hear and see what's going on. So yeah, all we're going to do is raise that blade up through the fence. Once I plug the power back in. And I should have my safety glasses on for that, but I didn't. So there we go. Now I can remove this one, install the regular blade again, and we'll be all good to go. Okay, and the last thing that I did with this insert is to go ahead and create a finger hole, so it just makes it easier to get it in and out. So next up, now that this one's done, is we'll get after those plywood ones with the epoxy inserts as soon as that epoxy cures up, and we'll see how well those hold up to the set screws. Okay, so all the epoxies had time to cure. So the last step is to see how well this tap does in the epoxy. It's noisy, but it's not really, it's not binding. And that seems to hold really well. So now I'll get through and do all the rest of these that way as well. Okay, so to wrap this video up, the template that I made will be invaluable for the life of the saw. So I would suggest making one of these at a bare minimum. As to whether or not I prefer the plywood or the hardwood, you know, they both work about the same. In all honesty, I would probably go with the hardwood over the plywood, merely because it's faster to just mill this down, thread it, and move on than it is to wait for epoxy to dry. So I have plenty now, so I'll be using the plywood ones for quite some time, but I did choose the hardwood one for my regular blade in the saw. So that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it was helpful. And until next time, take care.